Okay, everyone, welcome to week 4, and we're getting started on chapter 4, so that matches up pretty nicely. In this lesson, we're going to look at syllables and word endings, and especially one particular rule that we're going to concentrate on this week. So, in the beginning of the book, there's a listening activity, and you'll also have it as an activity in Canvas as well. But what the exercise is designed to do is to see what you hear when the speaker says it, because depending on how the syllable is pronounced, or if it's pronounced at all, will determine whether you hear a particular sound and word or not. And if you don't hear it correctly, it can sound like something else. In fact, you probably, in your own language, and if you're married, and one spouse is in one room and another spouse is in the other room, and your spouse says something to you and you go, "Did you say plant the garden?" "No, I said plant the garden." "Oh." So a lot of times, if we don't hear particular sounds at the word endings, at the very end of the word, it can change the whole meaning of the word itself or the sentence. So here's an activity for you to look at, okay? So every language has a certain type of rhythm, and syllables come together under certain rules. And for the first part here, it says you can listen to CD1 track 26, and depending on what kind of endings we put on a particular word, the root of a word, we can just keep adding syllables, okay? And syllables is like a beat, right? So my name is Stevie, so Stevie, I'm clapping my hands. Well, let's look at the word act. Act, that's just one syllable. Then we're going to add an IVE ending, active. Then we're going to add ly to that word, and that is going to give us an adverb, actively. And then we're going to add an ity, which gives us a noun, activity. So we went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 syllables depending on the word endings, and that's what we're looking at right there, right? Our word endings. So let's see, when you do this particular exercise here in the book, let's go back to our first page here. Sometimes it's tricky to catch it, and even for native speakers, so you might have to listen to this a couple of times. Now, I'm showing it here in the lecture because when you go to the activity on Canvas, it's going to be the same page, and you're going to listen to the speaker, and then you're going to mark which one you hear, okay? So, for example, the first one's done for you. You can listen at CD1 track 27. I use it to cook when I make my spaghetti sauce. I use it to cook when I make my spaghetti sauce. Did I say used to cook or use it to cook? I said use it to cook. Okay. I used to cook spaghetti sauce. I used to cook spaghetti sauce. That would be this one. I use it to cook my spaghetti sauce. That would be this one. Okay, so I know a big complaint with most any language learner is the native speaks so quickly, and it's very true, we do, because we're used to the patterns of our language. And so sometimes, as a non-native, you have to stop and wonder, did they just say that? Is that what they meant? And sometimes you're embarrassed to ask the person to say it again. And I'd like to encourage every student of mine to not worry about native speakers having to repeat something. We would much rather repeat it for you than assume that you understand and keep going. So never be afraid to say, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that, but more slowly? My English listening skills, I'm still trying to improve them." And 99% of the people would be happy to do that for you, okay? And if they're not happy, well, they're not a very nice person. All right, here's another one. The census taker had to get official quotas to turn in. That would be this one, official quotas, okay? I went and got some official quotes on the house. That would be this one. So as you listen, try to see, did the person say planned a garden or planted a garden? And you're going to be listening to this ED on a lot of these, and the S sound at the end. And anytime at the end of a word, if it's voiceless, like s, t, f, k, ch, sh. If that gets dropped, or if that starts to, the person didn't put up enough air at the end, then people don't always understand. So let's look at the first rule I want you to see. Okay, so this activity, listening activity 1, is going to be already in Canvas for you to do, but you can practice on your own before you get there. Okay, so let's go to the next page and see what we have there. So you can go through these listening activities as you play the CD through. And now we're going to take a look at the rules here, the rules that we're going to really pay attention to. Okay, and it says we use S endings in the following for plurals, like my brother's work. That means she has more than one brother. Okay, that's not possessive in this case. It means that she has more than one brother. My brother's work, maybe they're all firemen. Okay, we use S on verbs when it's the third person singular, right? So my brother works here. She sings loudly. Ms. Daniel teaches. So we have the S for verbs. And then for contractions, usually to show possession, right? So the battery's dead. The battery is dead. But that's not possessive in this case. They have one more. There's a contraction when you contract the verb to the noun here, but there's also contraction where we have possession. Miss Daniel's television, the cat's yard. Okay? So they want you to look at a pattern here. Most S endings are sounds. Det, debts. Serve, serves. Okay? But sometimes S endings are syllables unto themselves, okay? That it takes an entire syllable on its own. So let's look at the word loss, losses, losses. See how I added one more syllable to that? And how about fix, fixes, fixes. Well, I wonder, why is it when we added S here, did we still have only one syllable? Serve, serves. One syllable. Debt, debts. But when I use these words that still have one syllable initially, loss, losses, fix, fixes. So what is it that makes us add an entire syllable for some words and not for others? Okay, so let's take a look if we can get to the rule. So we pronounce the S endings in one of three ways. Listen and write what the S ending sounds like in each group, and you can listen to the CD track 32, or I will say it as well, and you can follow along with me. Okay, so let's look at the first set. Fit, fits, just one syllable there. Work, works. Mark, marks. Fit, fits. Work, works. Mark, marks. You probably heard this and no sound, right? How about this one? Pay, pays. Read, reads. Laura, Laura's, Laura's. So you got two there. Teach, teaches. Office, offices, offices. In fact, we get three out of that one. And then George, George's, George's. Okay? So, what do you hear in the first one? Well, I heard s. And what did we hear in the second one? Pays, reads, Laura's. That you should have heard a Z, right? So, we hear an S and we hear a Z. And let's look at the next one here. Teaches, offices, George's. z. So you either heard z or is. Okay? Let's take a look at the rule. So we'll see it in the next part of this. I'll bring it down. So let's take a look at our rule. And if you're following along, we are on page, see if I see it here, page 40. Okay, here we go. So there's Zorro, and he's fast asleep in his bed with his sword here. And here are the 3 rules that are going to be important for you to remember. So you want to commit these rules to memory. And this is it. Let's have a look. So let's take a look at the file here. Now, rule number 1 for word endings with S, okay, is if the word ends in a voiceless sound, t, k, see that? T, k, add the voiceless S, a hissing sound. So if it's already voiceless, t, k, if it's already voiceless, okay, then you can just add the S, and you're going to pronounce the S as a hissing sound. Okay? If the word ends in a voiced sound, and all vowels are voiced, by the way, so pay, the last sound you hear is A, and that's a vowel, and it's voiced, or read, D's voiced, or Laura, which is a vowel, add the voiced Z to it, okay? And so instead of saying S, you're going to pronounce it with a D. So I wouldn't say, let's take the sentence, he pays for himself. He pays for himself. Go ahead and make some text here and show you what I mean. What if we had the sentence, he pays his own way? Okay, and let's bring that out so you can see it. So we have that, right? So what do we mean by that? He pays his own way. Make that bigger for everybody to see. So because that ends in a vowel sign, A, and if we're going to make it third person singular, we're going to add that S, but we're not going to say he pays his own way. This is saying that even though you added an S, you're not going to pronounce the S sound because this is a voiced before it. There's voicing before that, okay? So if a voice sound comes before the S, then you're going to turn your vocal cords on and make the S a Z. So you say he pays his own way, not he pays his own way, okay? So that's what that means. If it ends in a voice sound, then turn the S into a voice sound, which the S counterpoint is a Z, right? It's that pair. Now, in the third rule, if the word already ends in a hissing or buzzing sound, like office or Georgia or garage, okay, add the syllable uz or is, right? So let me make a sentence with that. Let's see how we go here. Let's do this sentence. The buses left the station early. Okay, now we have the S for the plural because it says when you add an S ending, we'll go back up here, and if we add the S ending and it makes a hissing sound, it usually says that we just add the voiceless S. But this doesn't make a hissing sound when we say buses. See, it doesn't hit. It doesn't hiss at all. Buses. We don't say buses. Buses. We say buses. So the sound that you hear, if the word already ends in a hissing sound, which it does, see the word bus? That already ends in a hissing sound. So if the word already ends in S and you're going to add an S, then we take that S sound and make it voiced, and we add a syllable because it's too hard to put two S's together and make them both voiceless. So we just say buses, buses. Okay, so we say the first one that ends in the hissing sound, we say that voiceless. But then when we add it to be plural, or we add it to be a possessive with an S, then we have to say is or us. And it doesn't matter which. We can say buses or buses. Bus is or buses. It just depends on the speaker and how they want to pronounce it. Down below, it gives you an example of these. Here's sounds that end in a hissing or a buzzing noise. So if we have miss, then we have misses. And if we have size, that's a buzzing noise. Sizes. And push. And even though that's voiceless, shh, it's a hissing noise. Pushes. And watch. Watches. Okay? And judge. It's a buzzing noise. Judges. Judges. Okay? So the rule that we have in English is if we add an S for either plural or possession, okay, or contraction, what we will do is these three rules. Number one, if it ends in a voiceless sound, okay, t, k, something like that, then we're going to add the voiceless S, works, okay? But if it ends in a voice sound like pay, read, then we're just going to add the buzzing sound, pays, reads. But if the word already ends in a hissing or a buzzing sound, that's when we add a voiced Z sound, but we make it a syllable, so it becomes offices, Georges, sizes, pushes, okay? So that will help you now as a non-native speaker, and you look at spelling, that rule will help you identify, I've got to get this particular sound at the end of that word, okay, just by recognizing the spelling word. All right, that does it for this rule, and go ahead and practice as much as you can. There will be a couple of listening activities for you to do, but I also want you to go ahead and listen to the other exercises on the CD up to page 43 and just get really, really good at it. Okay, I'll see you in class.